Let's move forward and we'll start by understanding why we need continuous monitoring. Well, there are multiple reasons, guys, but I have mentioned four very important reasons why we need continuous monitoring. So let's have a look at each of these one by one. The first one is failure of CI/CD pipelines. Since DevOps is a buzzword in the industry right now, and most of the organizations are using DevOps practices, obviously they are implementing CI/CD pipelines, or it is also called as digital pipelines, right? Now, the idea behind the CI/CD pipeline is to make sure that the release should happen more frequently and it should be more stable in an automated fashion, right? Because there are a lot of competitors you might have in the market, and you want to release your product before them. So agility is very, very important, and that's why we use CI/CD pipelines. Now, when you implement such a pipeline, you realize that there can't be any manual intervention at any step in the process, or the entire pipeline slows down. So you will basically defeat the entire purpose. Manual monitoring slows down your deployment pipeline and increases the risk of performance problems propagating in production, right? So I hope you have understood this. If you notice the 3 points that I've mentioned, it's pretty self-explanatory. Rapid introduction of performance problems and errors, right? Because you are releasing software more frequently, so there has to be rapid introduction of performance problems. Rapid introduction of new endpoints causing monitoring issues. Again, this is pretty self-explanatory. Lengthy root cause analysis as the number of services expands because you are releasing software more frequently, right? So definitely the number of services are going to increase. And there's a lengthy root cause analysis, because of which you lose a lot of time, right? So let's move forward and we'll look at the next reason why we need continuous monitoring. For example, we have an application which is live, right? We have deployed it onto production server. Now we are running APM solutions, which is basically application performance monitoring. We are monitoring our application, how the performance is there any downtime, all those things, right? And then we figure out certain issues with our application, certain performance issues. Now to go back, basically to roll back and to incorporate those changes, to remove those bugs, developers are going to take some time because the process is huge because your application is already live, right? You cannot afford any downtime. Now imagine what if before releasing the software, on a pre-production server, which is nothing but the replica of my production server, I can run those APM solutions to figure out how my application is going to perform when it actually goes live, right? So that way, whatever issues are there, developers will be notified before and they can take the corrective actions. So I hope you have understood my point. The next thing is server health cannot be compromised at any cost. So I think it's pretty obvious, guys. Your application is running on a server. You cannot afford any downtime in that particular server or increase in the response time also, right? So you require some sort of a monitoring system to check your server health as well, right? What if your application goes down because your server isn't responding, right? So you don't want any scenario like that in a world like today where everything is so dynamic and the competition is growing exponentially. You want to give best service to your customers, right? And I think server health is very, very important because that's where your application is running, guys. I don't think so I have to stress too much on this, right? So we basically require continuous monitoring of our server as well. Now, let me just give you a quick recap of the things that we have discussed. So we have understood why we need continuous monitoring by looking at 3, 4 examples, right? The first thing is we saw what are the issues with CI/CD pipelines, right? We cannot have any sort of manual intervention for monitoring in such a pipeline because you're going to defeat the purpose of such a pipeline. Then we saw that developers have to be notified about the performance issues of the application before releasing it in the market. Then we saw server health cannot be compromised at any cost, right? So these are the three major reasons why I think continuous monitoring is very important for most of the organizations, right? Although there are many other reasons as well, right? Now let's move forward and understand what exactly is continuous monitoring because we just saw a lot of scenarios where manual monitoring or our traditional monitoring processes are not going to be enough, right? So let us understand what exactly is continuous monitoring and how is it different from our traditional process. So basically, continuous monitoring tools resolve any sort of system errors before they have any negative impact on your business. It can be low memory, unreachable server, etc., etc. Apart from that, they can also monitor the business processes and the application as well as your server, which we have just discussed, right? So continuous monitoring is basically an effective system where the entire IT infrastructure, starting from your application to your business process to your server, is monitored in an ongoing way and in an automated fashion, right? That's what basically is the crux of continuous monitoring. So these are the multiple phases given to us by NIST for implementing continuous monitoring. NIST is basically National Institute of Standard and Technology. So let me just take you through each of these stages. First thing is define. So you need to basically develop a monitoring strategy. Then what you're going to do, you're going to establish measures and metrics. And you're also going to establish monitoring and assessment frequencies at how frequently you're going to monitor it, right? Then you are going to implement whatever you have established, the plan that you have laid down. Then you're going to analyze data and report findings, right? So whatever issues that are there, you're going to find that. Post that, you're going to respond and mitigate that error. And finally, you're going to review and update the application or whatever you were monitoring, right? Now, let us move forward. And Patriot has also given us multiple phases involved in continuous monitoring. So let us have a look at those also one by one. The first thing is continuous discovery. So continuous discovery is basically discovering and maintaining near real-time inventory of all networks and information assets, including hardware and software. If I have to give an example, basically identifying and tracking confidential and critical data stored on desktops, laptops, and servers, right? Next comes continuous assessment. It basically means automatically scanning and comparing information assets against industry and data repositories to determine vulnerabilities. That's the entire point of continuous assessment, right? So one way to do that is prioritizing findings and providing detailed reports, right, by department, platform, network, asset, and vulnerability type. Next comes continuous audit. So continuously evaluating your client, server, and network device configurations and comparing them with standard policies is basically what continuous audit is, right? So basically what you're going to do here is gain insights into problematic controls using patterns and access permission of sensitive data, right? Then comes continuous patching. It means automatically deploying and updating software to eliminate vulnerabilities and maintain compliance, right? So if I have to give you an example, maybe correcting configuration settings, including network access and provision software according to end users' role and policies, all those things. Next comes continuous reporting. So aggregating the scanning results from different departments, scan types, and organizations into one central repository is basically what continuous reporting is, right? For automatically analyzing and correlating unusual activities in compliance with regulations. So I think it's pretty easy to understand. If I have to repeat it once more, I would say continuous discovery is basically discovering and maintaining an inventory, a near real-time inventory of all the network and information assets, whether it's your hardware or software. Then continuous assessment means automatically scanning and comparing the information assets from continuous discovery that we have seen against industry and data repositories to determine vulnerabilities. Continuous audit is basically continuously evaluating your client, server, and network device with configurations and comparing them with standards and policies. Continuous patching is automatically deploying and updating software to eliminate vulnerabilities and maintain compliance. Right? Patching is basically your remedy kind of a thing where you actually respond to the threats that you see or vulnerabilities that you see in your application. Continuous reporting is basically aggregating scanning results from different departments, scan types, and organizations into one central repository. So these are nothing but the various phases involved in continuous monitoring. Let us have a look at various continuous monitoring tools available in the market. So these are pretty famous tools. I think a lot of you might have heard about these tools. One is Amazon CloudWatch, which is nothing but a service provided to us by AWS. Splunk is also very famous, and we have ELK and Nagios, right? So ELK is basically Elastic, Logstash, and Kibana. In this session, we are going to focus on Nagios because it's a pretty mature tool. A lot of companies have used this tool and it has a major market share as well. And it's basically well suited for your entire IT infrastructure, whether it's your application or server or even it's your business process. Now let us have a look at what exactly is Nagios and how it works. So Nagios is basically a tool used for continuous monitoring of systems, your application, your services, and business processes, etc. in a DevOps culture, right? Now, in the event of failure, Nagios can alert technical staff of the problem, allowing them to begin remediation processes before outages affect business processes, end users, or customers. So I hope you're getting my point. It can alert the technical staff of the problem and they can begin remediation processes before outages affect their business process or end users or customers, right? With Nagios, you don't have to explain why an unseen infrastructure outage affect your organization's bottom line, right? So let us focus on the diagram that is there in front of your screen. So Nagios basically runs on a server, usually as a daemon or a service, and it periodically runs plugins residing in the same server. What they do, they basically contact hosts on servers or on your network or on the internet. Now, one can view the status information using the web interface, and you can also receive email or SMS notification if something goes wrong, right? So basically, Nagios daemon behaves like a scheduler that runs certain scripts at certain moments. It stores the results of those scripts and will run other scripts if these results change. I hope you're getting my point here, right? Now, if you're wondering what are plugins, so these are nothing but compiled executables or scripts It can be Perl script, shell script, etc. that can run from a command line to check the status of a host or a service. Now, Nagios uses the results from the plugins to determine the current status of the host and services on your network. Now, let us see various features of Nagios. Let me just take you through all these features one by one. It's pretty scalable and secure and manageable as well. It has a good log and database system. It automatically sends alerts, which we just saw. It detects network errors and server crashes. It has easy writing plugins. You can write your own plugins, right, based on your requirement, your business need. Then you can monitor your business process and IT infrastructure with a single pass, guys. Issues can be fixed automatically. If you have configured it in such a way, then definitely you can fix those issues automatically. And it also has support for implementing redundant monitoring hosts. So I hope you have understood these features. There are many more, but these are the pretty attractive features, and why Nagios is so popular is because of these features. Let us now discuss the architecture of Nagios in detail. So basically, Nagios has a server agent architecture, right? Now, usually on a network, a Nagios server is running on a host, which we just saw in the previous diagram, right? So consider this as my host. So Nagios server is running on a host, and plugins interact with local and remote hosts. So here we have plugins. So these will interact with the local resources or services, and these will also interact with the remote resources or services or hosts, right? Now these plugins will send the information to the scheduler, which will display that in the GUI, right? Now let me repeat it again. Nagios is built on a server agent architecture, right? And usually Nagios server is running on a host, and these plugins will interact with the local host or services or even the remote host or services, right? And these plugins will send the information to the scheduler, Nagios process scheduler, which will then display it on the web interface. And if something goes wrong, the concerned teams will be notified via SMS or through email, right? So I think we have covered quite a lot of theory. So let me just go ahead and open my CentOS virtual machine where I've already installed Nagios. So let me just open my CentOS virtual machine first. So this is my CentOS virtual machine, guys, and this is how the Nagios dashboard looks like. I'm running it at port 8000. You can run it wherever you want. I've explained that in the installation video how you can install it. Now, if you notice, there are a lot of options on the left hand side. You can go ahead and play around with it. You'll get a better idea. But let me just focus on few important ones. So here we have a map option here, right? If you click on that, then you can see that you have a local host and you have a remote host as well, right? So my Nagios process is monitoring both the local host and the remote host. So the remote host is currently down. That's why you see it like this. When I'll be running it, I'll be showing you how it basically looks like. Now, if I go ahead and click on host, you will see all the hosts that I'm currently monitoring. So I'm monitoring Edureka and localhost. Edureka is basically my remote server, and localhost is currently on which my Nagios server is running, right? So obviously it is up, and the other server is down. If I click on services, you can see that these are the services that I'm monitoring. For my remote host, I'm monitoring CPU, load, ping, and SSH. And for my local host, I'm monitoring current load, current users, HTTP, ping, root partition, SSH, swap usage, and total processes. You can add as many services as you want. All you have to do is change the host.cfg file, which I'm going to show you later. But for now, let us go back to our slides. We'll continue from there. So let me just give you a small recap of what all things we have discussed. So we first saw why we need continuous monitoring. We saw various reasons why industries need continuous monitoring and how it is different from the traditional monitoring systems. Then we saw what is exactly continuous monitoring and what are the various phases involved in implementing a continuous monitoring strategy. Then we saw what are the various continuous monitoring tools available in the market, and we focused on Nagios. We saw what is Nagios, how it works, what is its architecture, right? Now we're going to talk about something called as NRPE, Nagios Remote Plugin Executor, which is basically used for monitoring remote Linux or Unix machines. So it'll allow you to execute Nagios plugins on those remote machines. Now, the main reason for doing this is to allow Nagios to monitor local resources, like CPU load, memory usage, etc. on remote machines. Now, since these public resources are not usually exposed to external machines, an agent like NRP must be installed on the remote Linux or Unix machines. So even I have installed that in my CentOS box. That's why I was able to monitor the remote Linux host that I'm talking about. Also, if you check out my Nagios installation video, I've also explained how you can install NRP. Now, if you notice the diagram here, so what we have is basically the check underscore NRP plugin residing on the local monitoring machine. This is your local monitoring machine, which we just saw, right? So this is where my Nagios server is. Now, the check underscore NRP plugin resides on a local monitoring machine where your Nagios server is, right? So the one which we saw is basically my local machine, or you can say where my Nagios server is, right? So this check underscore NRP plugin resides on that particular machine. Now this NRP daemon, which you can see in the diagram, runs on remote machines, the remote Linux or Unix machine, which in my case was Edureka, if you remember. And since I didn't start that machine, so it was down, right? So that NRP daemon will run on that particular machine. Now there is a secure socket layer SSL connection between monitoring host and the remote host. You can see it in the diagram as well, the SSL connection, right? So what it is doing, it is checking the disk space, load, HTTP, FTP, remote services on the other host, right? And these are local resources and services. So basically, this is how NRP works, guys. You have an check underscore NRP plugin residing in the host machine. You have NRP daemon running on the remote machine. There's an SSL connection, right? Yeah, you have SSL connection, and this NRP plugin basically helps us to monitor that remote machine. That's how it works. Let's look at one very interesting case study. This is from Bitnetics, and I found it on the Nagios website itself. So if you want to check out, go ahead and check out their website as well. They have pretty cool case studies. Apart from Bitnetics, also there are a lot of other case studies on their website. So Bitnetics provides basically outsourced IT management and consulting to non-profit or small to medium businesses, right? Now, Bitnetics got a project where they were supposed to monitor an online store for an e-commerce retailer with $1 billion annual revenue, which is it's huge, guys. Now, it was not only supposed to, monitor the store, but it also needed to ensure that the cart and the checkout functionality is working fine. And it was also supposed to check for website defamation and notify the necessary staff if anything went wrong, right? Seems like an easy task, but let us see what are the problems that Bitnetics face. Now, Bitnetics hit a roadblock upon realizing that the client's data center was located in New Jersey, more than 500 miles away from their staff in New York, right? So there was a distance of 500 miles between where their staff is located and the data center. Now, let us see what are the problems they face because of this. Now, the two areas needed a unique but at the same time a comprehensive monitoring for their dev, test, and prod environment of the same platform, right? And the next challenge was monitoring would be hampered by the firewall restrictions between different application sites, functions, etc. So I think a lot of you know about this. Firewalls is basically sometimes can be a nightmare, right? Apart from that, most of the notifications that were sent to the client were ignored because mostly those were false positives, right? So the client didn't bother to even check those notifications. Now, what was the solution? So the first solution they thought is adding SSH firewall rules for network operation center, personnel, and equipment. Second is analyzing web pages to see if there's any problem or defamation occurrences. The third and the very important point was converting notification to Nagios alerts. And the problem that we saw, false positive, was completely removed with this escalation logic, where converting notifications to Nagios alerts and escalations with specific time periods for different groups. Right? I hope you're getting my point here. Now, configuring event handlers to restart services before notification, which was basically a fix for 90% of the issues, and using Nagios core on multiple servers at the NOC facility. And each Nagios worker was deployed at the application level with direct access to the host. So whatever Nagios worker or agent or remote machine we have was deployed at the application level and had the direct access to the host or to the master, whatever you want to call it. And they have implemented the same architecture for production, quality assurance, staging, and development environments. Now let's see what was the result. Now, because of this, there was a dramatic reduction in notifications thanks to the event handler's new configuration. Then there was an increase in uptime from 85% annually to 98% annually, which is significant, guys, right? Then they saw a dramatic reduction in false positive because of the escalations logic that I was just talking about. Then fourth point is estimating the need to log into multiple boxes and change configuration files. Thanks to Nagios configuration maintained in a central repository and pushed automatically to appropriate servers. Fourth point is estimating the need to log into multiple boxes and change the configuration files. And that happens because the Nagios configuration maintained in a central repository or a central master and can be pushed automatically to all the slaves, to all the servers or slaves or agents, whatever you want to call it. So this was the result of using Nagios, right? Now is the time to check out a demo where what I'll be doing is I'll be monitoring a couple of services, actually more than a couple of services of a remote Linux machine through my Nagios host, which I just showed you, right? So from there, I'll be monitoring a remote Linux host called Edureka, and I'll be monitoring like 3, 4 services. You can add whatever you want. And let me just show you what's the process. Once you've installed Nagios, what you need to do in order to make sure that you have remote host or a remote machine being monitored by your Nagios host. Now, in order to execute this demo, which I'm going to show you, you must have LAMP stack on your system, right? Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. And I'm going to use CentOS 7 here. So let me just quickly open my CentOS virtual machine and we'll proceed from there. So guys, this is my CentOS virtual box where I've already installed Nagios, as I've told you earlier as well, and this is where my Nagios host is running, or you can say the Nagios server is running, and you can see the dashboard in front of your screen as well, right? So let me just quickly open the terminal first. Let me clear the screen. So let me just show you where I've installed Nagios. So this is the path, right? If you notice in front of your screen, it's in user local Nagios. What I can do is I'll just clear the screen and I'll show you what all directories are inside this. So we can go inside this etc directory, and inside this I'm gonna go inside the objects directory, right? So why I'm doing this is basically if I want to add any command, for example, I want to add the check underscore nrp command. That's how I'm going to monitor my remote Linux host, if you remember in the diagram, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add that particular command. I've already done that. So let me just show you how it looks. So I'll just type gedit, or you can choose whatever editor that you like, and go inside the commands.cfg file, and let me just open it. So these are the various commands that I was talking about. Now you can just have a look at all of these commands. So this is to basically notify host by email if anything goes down, anything goes wrong in the host. This is for service. Basically, it'll notify if there's any problem with the service through email. This is to check if my host machine is alive. I mean, is it up and running? Now, this command is basically to check the disk space, like the local disk, then the load, right? You can see all of these things here, swap, FTP. So I've added these commands, and you can have a look at all of these commands which I've mentioned here. And the last command you see is I've added manually, because all of these commands, once you install, you get it by default. But the nrp check underscore nrp, which I'm highlighting right now with my cursor, is something which I have added in order to make sure that I will monitor the remote Linux host. Now let me just go ahead and save this, right? Let me clear my screen again, and I'll go back to my Nagios directory. Let me clear my screen again. Now, basically what this will do is this will allow you to use the check underscore nrp command in your Nagios service definitions, right? Now, what we need to do is update the nrp configuration file. So use your favorite editor and open nrp.cfg, which you will find in this particular directory itself. So all I have to do is first I'll hit ls, and then I can just check out this etc directory. Now, if you notice, there is an nrp.cfg file, right? I've already added it, so I'll just go ahead and show you with the help of gedit, or you can use whatever editor that you prefer. Now over here, you need to find this allowed host directive and add the private IP address of your Nagios server to the comma delimited list. If you scroll down, you will find something called allowed host, right? So just add a comma and start with the IP address of the machine that you want to monitor. So currently, let me just open it once more. So I'm going to use sudo because I don't have the privileges. Now in this allowed host directory, all I have to do is comma and the IP address of the host that I want to monitor. So it is 192.168.1.21. Just go ahead, save it, come back, clear the terminal. Now save and exit. Now this configures NRP to accept requests from your Nagios server via its private IP address, right? And then just go ahead and restart NRP to put the changes into effect. Now on your Nagios server, you need to create a configuration file for each of the remote hosts that you monitor, as I was mentioning before as well. Now, where you're going to find it in etc servers directory, and let me just go ahead and open that for you. Let me go to the servers directory. Now, if you notice here, there is edureka.cfg file. This is basically the host that I'll be monitoring, right? Now, if I go ahead and show you what I have written here is basically, first, what I've done is I've defined the host. It's basically a Linux server, and the name of that server is edureka, alias, whatever you want to give. This is the IP address, maximum check attempts, the periods. I want to check it 24/7. Notification interval is what I've mentioned here, and notification period. So this is basically about all my hosts. Now, in that host, what all services I want to monitor? I want to monitor generic services like ping. Then I want to monitor SSH. Then I'm going to monitor CPU load as well. These are the three services that I'll be monitoring, and you can find that in your etc servers directory. Over there, you have to create a proper configuration file for all of the hosts that you want to monitor. Let me clear my terminal again. Just to show you my remote machine as well, let me just open that. So this is my remote machine, guys. Over here, I've already installed NRP. So over here, I'm just going to show you how you can restart NRP systemctl restart nrpe.service. And here we go. It's asking for a password. I've given that. So my NRP service has started. Actually, I've restarted again. I've already started it before as well. Let me just show you how my Nagios dashboard looks like in my server. Now this is my dashboard again. If I go to my host tab, you can see that we are monitoring two hosts, edureka and localhost. Edureka is the one which I just showed you. which is up and running, right? I can go ahead and check out this map, legacy map view as well, which basically tells me that my Edureka is a remote host. Then also I have various services that I'm monitoring. So if you remember, I was monitoring CPU load, ping, and SSH, which you can